All right, welcome to Chat It Up here on the Chat It Up Sports Network. Greg Larner, Chase Green, and Garrett Tolley. We have a little bit of a different setup today with the three-man crew, but we're rocking and rolling. And unfortunately, the Tennessee Vols basketball season has come to an end at the Elite Eight, the hands of Purdue. It was a very difficult game. And joining us now to talk about it, our first virtual guest. Should we give him three claps?
Three claps, one time.
2, 3. Ryan Shumpert of RockyTopInsider.com. He covers the Vols on everything football, basketball, baseball. He has got you covered 100%. Shump was always a mainstay on my show on The Word with G on ESPN Chattanooga, and he is finally back to join us here on Chat It Up. Shump, welcome back, buddy. It's good to see you. I never got a chance to see you. I always got a chance to hear you, but this is great to see you.
I know, an extra component of it. Yeah, glad to join you guys. Appreciate you guys having me on. And true, I didn't know I did a first virtual guest, so truly an honor to be able to join, and certainly a lot to talk about on this Monday edition.
There's nobody else I'd rather have as our first virtual guest, with as amazing as you were as a guest on The Word with G every single week. This man showed up every single Thursday on a Rocky Top Insider on a Vol Talk Thursday. So let's get right into it, boys, shall we?
We shall.
It was a disappointing loss, 72-66. Dalton Knecht did his very best to keep this team around, but Zach Edey and the officials had other plans. So, Rye, give me just your overall thoughts on that game. You were there. You were very courtside. You had an amazing view of the game. What were your overall thoughts on why Tennessee lost this game? I know a lot of people want to point to the officiating and the imbalance in free throws. I don't know if I would go that way, but I want to get your thoughts on it.
Yeah, no, I wouldn't either, and I'm sure we'll talk about the officiating some, but I don't think that's why Tennessee lost. I think you look at it, Jonas Edey was a no-show, and I mean, we'd said it for really all season that Tennessee was going to be at its best when Jonas was at his best, and I will say this about Jonas, man. He lets you know early in games whether he's going to have it or not. And first possession, the air ball is about a 6-footer. You knew he wasn't going to have it, and he struggled, and you know, Zakai Ziegler had an off shooting night. I thought he did some good things other than that. But at the end of the day, you just didn't have enough guys around Dalton Knecht that could help him out offensively. And on the defensive end, you know, Zach Edey was just too much. If Purdue's physicality, what they could do on the glass, the way they could score inside, even in a game when a 40% three-point shooting team, I think, shot 3 of 14, did not shoot very well from three-point range. It was just too much, and Tennessee couldn't muster up quite enough offense to knock down a really good Purdue team.
Yeah, to kind of roll off that, do you feel like they should have gone to the double earlier? I know we played him one-on-one a lot, and at times, you know, like we're going to give a lot of flowers to Estrella. He played his balls off. Let's be honest, okay. But he's still, you know, you're going to get scored on, and for him, it was a nice night. Like you mentioned, Edey was just a zero, but. Do you think they should have gone to the double early, especially when you kind of saw the shooting just wasn't there for Purdue?
Yeah, I think in hindsight, I would say that. But at the same time, like, they played it exactly how I said they should play it going in, which was make Zach Edey do it all. Take the guards away. If he scores 40 and beats it, so be it. I think you could certainly say they should have adjusted earlier. But I don't think they were overly slow, you know, necessarily to adjust either. So, and it was, look, Zach Edey's always a big part of Purdue's offense. It's always a vocal point. It was to like another level. It was like, we're not going to have a single possession down the court where Zach Edey doesn't touch the ball. And he's going to shoot it, or we're going to get it right back to him if we don't have a wide open three. So I almost, you know, at the same time, tip my cap to Matt Painter and Purdue, who, you know, Tennessee said, all right, let's have these other guys, you know, let's force Zach Edey to beat us. And they said, we'll give it to him every single time. We are going to go to him over and over and over again. And certainly it paid off for him. And Tennessee probably could have gone to the double earlier. I don't think it, you know, was necessarily crazy the way they played it either.
Yeah, it was. It's a hindsight 2020 type situation, but yeah, I mean, you never saw a possession that they didn't go back and repost again. And I tried to see the 3 seconds, and I'm sure you could find them. I'm sure you can, but you can look at a lot of those replays and see that he keeps his foot right on the line or right on the block. And it's so super frustrating. Like, I was as mad as all get out yesterday, but it's hard to bounce back whenever a guy can just reseal and abuse you that way. Especially, you know, he got Estrella a couple of times too on those drop steps, and Edey in all sorts of different ways. Awaka defended him well, but I mean, he's been in foul trouble every game he's been in this year. So I don't know. It's a frustrating guard because he is such a massive man and he's going to get away with stuff because he is a darling. And that's kind of what you earn as a superstar. Like we complain about it all the time in the NBA, and Edey's one of the biggest stars because he's one of the biggest human beings I've ever seen. So
7'4".
yeah,
he's a massive guy.
massive, bro, massive.
And it was on the massive aspect, like the thing that stood out to me from being there and really being at the press conferences on Saturday, I guess, the day before the game, like all the Purdue players are sitting up there with Matt Painter.
Mm-hmm.
His head, not figuratively, not like he's got a big head, which some of his post game.
He's got a noggin him up. He's got a noggin.
That might be true too, but physically, his head was unfathomably big. Like I swear, it was twice as big as Fletcher Lawyer, who he was sitting beside. Like obviously, it's going to be big, but even for a 7'4" guy, like it was unbelievable to just be sitting there and seeing it in person.
He was standing up, cutting down the nets at the lead. I saw pictures. He was literally like he wasn't on a ladder.
I don't need a ladder.
No,
he is the ladder.
He is the ladder. Why don't people just climb up him?
Well,
get on the shoulders.
I'm sure there are pictures of that somewhere on social media.
There's got to be something. Yeah.
Yeah.
Fletcher climbing up top.
Yeah, no big deal. All right, so I want to ask you, Shump, just quickly about Santiago Vescovi. How big of a loss was it not to have him there in the Sweet 16 game and then the Elite Eight game? I know there were some guys, DeLeon and Carr, stepped up and they came in and played, and Gainey played a little more extended minutes and whatnot. And I know he came back and he played a couple of minutes in that game, in the Elite Eight game against Purdue, but you could just tell, like, he looked pale. He looked like he was still battling out there, sickness. How big of a loss was it not to have Santiago Vescovi, in your estimation, at full strength for especially this Elite Eight game?
Really, I think it was maybe a bigger loss in the Creighton game because you were forced to playing the young guys because Jordan Gainey and Jemai Meshack get 2 fouls. And he is a better defender than Gainey. And certainly Cam Carr came in and played well. Freddie wasn't bad. I also don't think it was a coincidence that Creighton's best 3-minute stretch offensively in the game was the 3 minutes that Freddie DeLeon was in. I mean, that wasn't a coincidence.
Got lost.
The Purdue game, and you're right. Like he ran right past us exiting the floor before the game, and he looked like death still. Like he looked like he was feeling terrible. And but at the same time, like it hurts. But he wasn't shooting well down the stretch of the season. Like and Jordan Gainey came in and he hit shots. Like I thought Jordan Gainey played about his best basketball this season this weekend. So it hurts when you have a starter and a dude that's so integral to what you do defensively, and just offensively too, from a ball movement standpoint and knowing how to set up guys. But when you're playing a team that's going back to the big man over and over and over again, it's not as important a defensive game for what you're going to do on the guards. And the fact that Gainey did step up and hit shots, I don't think it was necessarily like a game changer or something that just heavily impacted the outcome of the basketball game.
Yeah, because he does bring a level of ball pressure, but I thought they actually had decent pressure on them, the guards, throughout the night on Purdue. But Purdue does such a good job on the secondary motion to bring those guys, and they get open. They set those little back screens, and they're so good at doing the pick and roll. And then they'll set a back screen for Edey again. So then it gets Estrella lost or gets whoever, Edey was lost multiple times. And that was the frustrating part, was you can't help. And there's leading to wide open layups. And that's the part. It's like, with somebody like Vescovi, that might've been the only thing, is like he might've played that a little bit better than some of the other guys. But like you said, I don't know if it would have been a massive difference, but man, it was a frustrating thing to watch. Did you ever think, like, surely we're going to hit a shot that's not named Dalton Knecht? Like somebody had to find something in the second half, but it just never happened.
It felt like Zakai was surely going to hit a shot because he had so many open looks. But like besides that, Dalton took so many shots.
I know.
And like it's like
31 of them, 31 shots.
Even if you take Dalton out, Tennessee shot 37% from 3 in that game. Like Jordan Gainey went 2 of 2 from 3. I think Josiah went 2 for 2 for 3. I know he hit 2 threes. Like other guys did hit some shots. Zakai's the guy you circled that just couldn't get one to go down. And again, like a lot of his looks were open. To me, what almost felt like the backbreaker offensively, and it's the same matchup issue with Creighton and Purdue with what Kalkbrenner and Edey do defending the rim, it's just going to be tough to get anything consistently at the basket. And that's where I think Dalton, for as amazing as a game as he had, he couldn't get that elbow jumper to go off the pick and roll. And because of that, it never took Edey to extend defensively and come out and have to guard from 15 feet. If you could have done that, I feel like that would have opened up some stuff for either Ziegler or Knecht, maybe Ziegler if he was hitting his floaters, to be able to get past him for a layup, or to maybe have someone cut from the corner and get an open look. But it's just so hard to score consistently in a game where you just can't get any real good looks at the basket.
Well, I mean, as I was watching the game on the drive back from South Carolina, keep your eyes on the road, kids. Definitely, Purdue had a better sense of
who made your wife drive.
Well, I know that's not going to happen.
No, I know.
But Purdue definitely had a better sense of who they were as a team. Dalton Knecht in multiple games this season, especially, I'm thinking about Kentucky and then the last game. He has a tendency to shoot them a little bit into the games and then out of the games. It almost as he doesn't trust the rest of his teammates. So, and where Zach Edey, he's such a center point for that offense that if anybody else gets a chance, he's fine with it. He's a really great all around player. So, did the better team win? Naturally, by far.
Yeah, I
right?
think the better team won. Yeah, and I think that's when you look at it to scale, it's like it's just a tough draw from the standpoint of I think Tennessee was the third best team left in the Elite Eight, and they had to play the second best team left, and they caught no breaks this year with the way the bracket unfolded. And certainly Tennessee is capable of beating Purdue. Look, they lost 2 games to them by a combined 10 points this season. There's not a huge gap, but there's a reason Tennessee lost whatever it was 9 games by the end of the year, and Purdue has 4 losses right now. And Purdue played an incredibly hard non-conference schedule, and Purdue won on a night where they didn't shoot well. I think Purdue's the better team, and that didn't mean Tennessee couldn't win. I don't think it's, like I said, I don't think it's a massive gap, but I do think the better team won that game.
I want to ask quickly, and I'm going to let Chase jump in afterward, Garrett, whomever wants to jump in. But I wanted to ask about the atmosphere. I know we talked a little bit about it off the air, but tell us a little bit about the atmosphere of this game. You were there. You're sitting courtside. You were in the locker room after the game. You were at the press conferences, whatever, around this team and around this game. Describe to us the atmosphere being there and kind of it being so close to where Purdue is. I think it was like a 4-hour drive away from their campus. Describe the atmosphere for us.
Yeah, I think I said it was like 80-20 is probably what I put the number on it. Purdue fans to Tennessee fans.
Yikes.
And it was what you'd expect from a program that's been really good at basketball and hasn't made a Final Four in 40 years. Like there was a hunger and an electricity in the air that, this was the team to do it. And it was a road environment. Like that's, you don't have 20% Tennessee fans at most road games, unless it's Vanderbilt and you have 80% Tennessee fans at the game. But, I'd say Kentucky was the loudest environment Tennessee of the games I was at, which, I missed a handful of road ones, but that was the loudest environment I was at this year. After that, Wisconsin, Alabama game, there was North Carolina game even. It was comparable to those of, how much of a tough environment it was to go in and play in. And I'm sure that had, that made it harder on Tennessee, but Tennessee's been a good road team this year. So I don't think it was just like something that Tennessee was debilitating to Tennessee, either.
Yeah, I mean, you didn't have the worst seats in the house either, buddy. Let's be honest. Sent that little picture out on Instagram, boys just right on the floor, not hurting for much, let's be honest. But I do want to ask too, I mean, speaking of the atmosphere, it had to get tough. I mean, I'm trying to fade away from the foul call stuff. Like this is on Tennessee for not making shots. But it had to get a little rowdy in there, didn't it?
Yeah, and the one I'd point to, and this will bring me to my greater point about the officiating.
Yeah.
What I think was the third foul on Tobe Awaka was an absolute joke. I mean, he's just playing complete legal defense, armbar on Edey, and he's one of the, 4 or 5 guys in the country that's strong enough that Edey can't back him down, and the Purdue fans are just going crazy, and the ref at half court calls a foul. I mean, it was laughable. I mean, that was a terrible call. Now, on the officiating as a whole, and I tweeted about this earlier today, there were a couple fouls called on Tennessee on Edey that I didn't think were fouls. There were more fouls Tennessee committed on Edey that were not called fouls. Like that's he earns his fouls, man. Like you got the way his physical as he plays and as good as he is, you're gonna foul him a lot. Where I think I can think of 3 fouls off the top of my head that were obvious fouls on him that weren't called. 2 on offensive rebounds. The other on the loose ball when Josiah kind of had possession of it on the ground. He jumps on him, doesn't make contact with the ball, eventually wrestles the ball and gets a jump ball call. And, maybe he doesn't foul out of the game or anything, but the fact that he plays the whole, he gets his first foul with 14 minutes left, and then he plays the whole game with 1 foul. He's able to be so aggressive in the way he's contesting shots, the way he's going for rebounds, the way he's fighting for positioning, because he's not in foul trouble. And that's where I think, and it's not just anybody that's like, this is a conspiracy against Tennessee. Like, that's absolutely not the case. It's how every Purdue game's called all year. And it's, to me, what makes it infuriating, insufferable to watch, whatever you want to say. It makes Purdue, who's an awesome team, not fun to watch.
That's a quote out of
what Chase said.
Chase had a whole segment,
Whole rant about it.
Yeah, because I was talking about there are, I guess I listed off 16 games. 16 games, and Purdue only lost the foul discrepancy once, and that was at Illinois. And I think the Big Ten was like, "You guys, I'm done here, man. I can't. We have to have one game where they don't get him." And it's tough, and it's an insufferable thing to watch. But I mean, I know a lot of people mention this, and I'm sure you have too. It's like, hey, if you're a Purdue fan or you're on the team or you're around to the program, you're just like, sorry, man, it's winning basketball games. And I hate it. I'm on the other side of it. But as somebody, and I mentioned this a couple pods ago, as a Tyler Hansborough absolute fanboy growing up, I started to dislike the guy his senior year because it was the same issue. Like, he would do his little shot fake, shoulder into your chest, and get and ones over and over. And I was like, this sucks to watch. So I've seen it even on the other side. And it's like, dude, this has got to be figured out. And Edey's a hard guard. Like, because me and G were talking about it. Every time he comes down the floor, if I'm playing the guy, as a man that's had to guard a lot of taller people and being a super undersized, not very athletic center his whole life, I'm chucking that guy in the chest, and I'm doing a lot of fouls that would never, ever get called, because that's just what you have to do as like an undersized person, especially whenever you're going against this monstrosity of a human being. So I'm with you. It's a lot of foul calls that, let's be honest, and Tennessee's one of the most physical teams in the country. And I wonder too, do you think there was any factor in the mind of officiating like, hey, we can't let what happened to Duke last year with Euros and those cats with Tennessee do it again?
No, because I mean, Zach Edey's so much more physical than Kyle Filipowski, who was complaining about getting hit by a frat boy at Wake Forest this year and faking an injury about it. Like,
yes,
that stuff happened, and I was like, okay, I understand how Uros Plavsic got in this guy's head. This makes a lot of sense now. So no, I don't think that. I do think it's funny. I mean, it's like the one game all year Tennessee could have used Uros, like just a big body to go in there.
Yeah, I didn't even think about that.
Yes. That's a great point.
Yeah, so I don't necessarily think that. And to your point about Tyler Hansborough too, like Grant Williams Jr. year, exact same thing. Like, not the most fun way. And when you become a star and you can hunt fouls, and those guys hunt fouls more than Edey does. Edey just gets fouled because he's so big, and he plays so physical too. It's not just that he's like tall; he's a physical player, which forces you to have to be incredibly physical back. And obviously, a lot of fouls come.
Yeah. All right. So I want to ask you just generally overall about this Tennessee season. As you kind of alluded to there, 27-9, they end up finishing. They're the top number 2 seed in the tournament. They get to the Elite Eight, only the second time in program history. So when you think back about this entirety of the season, I know you love college basketball, you love covering it and everything. You've been there every step of the way. How would you quantify this season for Tennessee?
I think it's undoubtedly an extremely successful season. To me, it's no-brainer the best season in Tennessee basketball history. I mean, I'm sure people can debate that, but when you talk about winning the SEC regular season title outright and making a run to the Elite Eight and losing to one of the teams that's been one of the 3 best teams in the country the entire season, and there's been a pretty big gap after those 3 teams, like, it was a great year, and it was an incredibly fun team to watch play. The team that kept their identity and their toughness with adding an offensive element and a player in Dalton Knecht that the SEC won't see again in a really long time, just how unbelievable he was to watch. It was an awesome season, and I think, and I've made this point a few times, and I'll try to make it without rambling. I've made it so many times, I think I'm getting a little bit better.
It's your spiel, baby. It's your spiel. How about it?
It's such a lesson to me of breaks in the NCAA tournament and taking advantage of your breaks, because Tennessee got no breaks this time, and they played one of their best games of the season in the Sweet 16 and beat Creighton, and they came back and they didn't play great against Purdue, but they didn't play bad either. They didn't wither away from the moment or play. They just lost to a better team. As to me, again, Tennessee was the third best team left in the field in the Elite Eight, and they had to play one of the two teams better than them, and they lost in what was a close game and what was essentially a true road game. And I think a lot of people will look at the season way back like, man, what a missed opportunity with the year you had Dalton Knecht that you couldn't get over the hump. You know, I find myself, and especially in the realm of watching what Alabama's done, a team that was way better 2 of the last 3 years and bowed out in Sweet 16 and got just an incredible break this year with how the bracket unfolded for them. But they took advantage of it. And I look back at like 2018 is the year I look back at now and say, Tennessee lost a close game to Loyola in the round of 32. They had easy Sweet 16 and Elite 8 games. It's about, you know, the NCAA tournament's so unpredictable, and the way stuff falls. Sometimes Rick Barnes' 2 best teams, it's fallen. They've gotten no breaks in the tournaments. It's about being able to capitalize when you do get those breaks. And I think what Tennessee had mixed with Alabama making to the Final Four is something that the point was kind of really driven into me this tournament, and particularly this past weekend.
Yeah, it's all about matchups. Like you go back to the Carolina Duke one in the Final Four. Listen, we sold our soul to the devil so we could defeat the devil himself. And that's how that worked out, Lovey. So it's all about matchups because that team had no business. Like, unfortunately, Baylor also was out without their best rebounder that year. So Carolina goes in, and the weirdest game of all time that I've ever watched was that Baylor UNC game, that run, and still almost choked it away. But Baylor was out without their real big guy that year. And then you kind of play a higher seed and you just kind of go through. And so that's a perfect point. Like Tennessee just hasn't got that. You know, you even look back to the Ohio State year. You're like, oh, now I get to play Evan Turner, the best player in the country. And then you just keep going through those years and you're like, it never seems to happen. And then this guy named Ryan Klein comes in and cooks you for a 28 piece. It's like, dadgummit. So it's all about where it falls. Looking at next year, what do you? We can do a little small preview. I know you're still riding high off this year, but what are you kind of thinking with next year with no Dalton, Z coming back, but no Triple J, Santee? I mean, there's a lot of holes to fill now. Yeah,
there is. You know, I wrote a piece people can check out on RTI today. What's next for Tennessee basketball? Kind of looking at some of those questions, and they lose a lot of production with those 3 guys. And you know, I think obviously Dalton's the most obvious one to point to. They got to go find a wing, a guard scorer in the portal. That's priority number 1. I think they need to find shooting in the portal too, wherever that would be. I think they need to find, ideally, like Josiah is to me the hardest guy to replace in the sense of, okay, that probably sounds stupid because of how good Dalton is. We know what you mean. Find Dalton Knecht, obviously. Yeah. But there are a lot of really good scorers you can find. What Josiah did and his versatility of how important that was to this team and the glue that he was defensively, that's hard to find. There are not a lot of guys in the portal who are 6'6" or 6'7" and can shoot 34, 35% from 3 and defend big men defensively and switch 1 through 4 just about. Like, that's going to be hard to find. And that's something they need to find in the portal, is somebody to either a stretch 4 that can, you know, go out and maybe hit 33s for you over the course of the season at a relatively efficient rate, or a guy like Josiah who's 6'6" and has the physicality to be able to bang with 4 men. So those are kind of the 2 biggest things to me, is a wing scorer and a kind of a versatile 4 guy that can allow Tennessee to continue to play some more small ball, which I think was a big part of why their offense was so much better this year, and just in addition to how good Dalton Knecht was. So those are the things I kind of look at in the portal as the most pressing needs for Tennessee.
Just to before you go, 1 sec, I just want to throw these numbers out there, and I promise I'll let you go. So Ryan mentioned, like, between those 3 guys, they accounted for a lot of the production for Tennessee. He put down in his article, go check it out, RockyTopInsider.com, that they accounted for 51% of Tennessee's points, 43% of the rebounds, and 41% of the assists. That's going to be a lot to replace.
And I love what you said, Ryan. They got to go into the portal. Tennessee, I saw a stat or a lineup of information of the Elite 8 teams left, and Tennessee had by far the most players who started with Tennessee.
Yeah.
And the rest of the teams were all kind of hodgepodge.
No, Duke had
Duke,
every
yeah.
single one of their
Well,
their starters
Duke-
started with.
Okay, yeah, but Duke is a one of those programs that you don't leave mostly. But these other teams that are just kind of fighting for the Final Four for the most part, for the first time, they had a collection of portal players. And so, in your opinion, Ryan, how is Rick Barnes? I mean, his approach is going to have to change. I mean, from a recruiting perspective, I mean, he did a great job with Dalton, but I mean, how do you feel like his teams are going to be looking forward? I mean, are they going to be a hodgepodge of guys from the portal, or is he going to recruit like he has, probably the whole career out of high school?
Well, I think it's kind of a balance of both. I think he's always going to want the identity of his program to be the guys that have been in it and guys that grow. And I know Tennessee's coaching staff as a whole is really excited about the freshman class that they had this year. And none of those guys played heavy minutes, but Cam Carr, JP Estrella, two dudes they're really, really high on. And they're going to continue to supplement that with portal guys. And look, Rick said it many times, like, we are not building for the future. We every year are going to attack the offseason as to what helps us win the most this year. We owe it to the seniors. And now we're talking about a guy in Rick Barnes who's 69, and who knows how many more years he's going to coach. I think he's going to be aggressive with it. So I think you are going to see them prioritizing keeping the guys that have been effective in the program and developing them. That's always going to be a big part of it. But they're also going to be aggressive in the portal, and they're going to pursue guys that way. And I think in some ways, you mentioned it, recruiting high school guys his entire career. In the portal and NIL, it's driven out some of the older coaches in the game. I think Rick kind of likes it. Like, I know he doesn't have a problem. I'm sure, like all coaches, he doesn't like some of the bidding war aspects of NIL, but he has no problem with the guys making money, especially the guys that have been in the program for multiple years and he's no problem with that. And I think when you're talking about someone has taken a little bit of a backseat from a recruiting standpoint when it comes to prep players, you're recruiting a top high school or top 40 kid. You're spending 18 months, 12 months consistently recruiting them. To miss out on them, like, I don't think Rick Barnes likes putting in that effort at this point in his career. In the portal, 10 days, 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Rick Barnes can be real aggressive, can be
Easy.
really on top of kids recruiting them, and you miss out, okay, you spent 10 days recruiting them. I think he likes it from that standpoint of where in prep recruiting, he's much more of a closer now. He delegates a ton of that responsibility to assistant coaches, and the top guys, he'll go watch them when they want him to go watch them. But he's not at every recruiting weekend in April and in July anymore. And I think in the way the portal works and the way that recruiting period's condensed, I think he kind of likes that. And I think that almost makes it more feasible for him in some ways to continue to coach longer.
Yeah, I didn't see him a lot at the Cooper Flag shows this year. He wasn't there trying to recruit, but I really hope he sticks around. And it also helps the NIL money whenever you got a big old backing like we do, brother. We got a bank stash, don't we? It's a nice little NIL fund. We're doing okay.
Yeah, they're not hurting. I mean, they're not the very, very top of the sport, but they're in that second tier, and they got plenty of money to spend in NIL, and it certainly makes them competitive. And that's where I think Dalton, it'll be interesting to see his impact. Like, Tennessee had recruited a ton of transfers, and they'd taken a ton of transfers ever since, even before the transfer portal was a thing. They took, it felt like a guy a year. They had very moderate to mild success. Now you got the best transfer in the country last year, and the dude that nobody had heard of turns into the best or second best player in college basketball. I'm curious to see how that will help the perception of Tennessee's ability to plug portal players in and make them really, really successful.
All right, I have a question in terms of the players that are coming back. Out of those guys that are coming back, obviously not the portal guys, not the high school guys, but the guys that were there that are coming back, which of those guys do you think needs to take the biggest step forward for this team next year?
That's a good question. To me, the guy that stands out, because I think in the front court, you need one of a Walker or Estrella too. One of those guys needs to take a step forward. But I'd point to Cam Carr. Like, he's a guy I'm high on, and he's a guy that I know the coaches like a lot. And another stat from the story, those three guys, Tennessee lost 179 made 3-pointers last season. They are going to need shooting, and Cam Carr is a guy that can shoot Cam Carr sees nothing but green lights, baby. I mean, he's got no hesitation.
All gas, no brakes.
That corner three and
no
Creighton,
break.
dog.
And that's how you come in and hit a big 3 in a Sweet 16 game at a big moment too. You know, Creighton was in a run at that moment and no hesitation for a dude that has, I don't even know the last time he played, at least in a meaningful moment before that. He's a talented offensive player, and I think that confidence bodes well for his ceiling in the long term and could bode well for him next year when you're talking about a Tennessee team that needs some guys to come in and be effective shooters. So he's a guy I'd point to. You hope Awaka can maybe make that third-year jump that a lot of big men have made in Rick Barnes' program. Learning how to play without fouling would go a long way. And then again, Estrella is a guy that they're really high on too. So I think he is going to see an increased role. And if one of those two guys, makes a big step forward, I think that would be big for Tennessee as well.
Does anybody else have anything on the men's basketball side of things? I guess before we get to the ladies.
No, just a word from my wife, Bliss. I'm just really proud of our boys.
There you go.
And that's all. And that's all. That's half of probably our population there. So
all right,
great season.
I got one thing. It's not really to do with men's basketball, but I got to ask you. You got a couple good road trips in this year. What was your best food spot you had all year?
Oh, that's a good question. Best food spot. Man, what was the name of the place we went to in downtown Madison? Burger place.
Wisconsin, baby.
Oh,
that's probably
Wisconsin.
It. What's that?
Wisconsin, baby.
Yeah,
Wisconsin. Go.
So that was probably the best in basketball season. Baseball season's where you sneakily get more opportunities because basketball you're in and out real quick for the game.
True.
Baseball you're there for a 3-game weekend, and I'm terrible. I was even talking to somebody about this a couple weeks ago, and I'm forgetting the name of the place. Wright's Barbecue in Fayetteville was great. There was a barbecue place in Clemson that some of the best barbecue I've ever had in my life. But again, I'm not being very helpful because I can't remember the name of it.
See, I think it's interesting because I've been on both sides of it, like from the media perspective and now on the coaching perspective with UTC softball. And you get many more opportunities to go different places in unique spots when you're a media member. When you're a part of the coaching staff or the team, it's like, well, we're going to go to the generic Texas Roadhouse or we're going to Panera or McAllister's Deli. Like, you got no choice. I would love to get a chance to go to those cool barbecue spots, but a lot of the times they don't feed us barbecue. It's just more of these generic spots. So I like the media member side of things and eating better, but most of the time you have to pay for it, or do they take care of it for you?
No, we're usually paying for it. Football sometimes gets changed, but yeah,
so
usually
I'll take that. I'll take that sacrifice where I don't have to pay, and I'll eat the generic food.
Yeah. Doggone good barbecue in downtown Athens, another great one. Went there after the game this year down in Athens.
Okay.
Very nice.
Well, Shump, when you go down to Austin, Texas in the future, you just let me know. I know all the spots to tell you to go for their run. Okay.
Beautiful. We'll do.
All right. So on the ladies' side of things, this happened on Monday. Tennessee fires Kelly Harper after, I believe it was 5 seasons as Lady Vols head coach. She obviously won multiple national championships with Tennessee and now being a coach there. She had over 100 wins and I believe 52 losses. So she wasn't terribly, she was successful there in that role. But I think what Danny White said, in correspondence of that move was like, hey, like, we're trying to build elite programs. Like, we want elite status at every single program that we have here under me as the AD. And it just seemed like they continued to come up short on women's basketball side. Tell me a little bit about the women's basketball and Kelly Harper getting let go on Monday.
Yeah, I mean, if Kelly Harper did what she did for the women's program, for the men's program, she'd be doing a great job. But it's a different standard when you got 8 national championship banners hanging up in that arena. And, I don't think she was terrible by any means, but they never got over the hump. And you saw that in 2 seasons in the Sweet 16. You saw that just epitomized this year when 3 close losses against number 1 South Carolina, one that you kind of lose in unfathomable fashion. A real good comeback in around 32 against North Carolina State, come up short. So I think it was the right move. I was still a little surprised they did it. I kind of thought they might give her one more year, but she has not recruited well in the prep ranks. And you had Jordan Horston and Rakia Jackson 2 years ago, who were 2 elite players, and Horston went to the WNBA after last year. Rakia Jackson's going there after this year. There wasn't a whole lot of reasons to think they were about to get over that hump and become an elite program anytime soon. So I was impressed by Danny White being proactive to me about making the move. And Look, he said it. He said when he got hired that, the standard for every program was going to be elite. No program should have that standard more than the Lady Vols basketball program does. And to me, this is a move that really signifies that is truly the goal, to compete with the very, very best in the sport.
Yeah, that was big surprise because I'm with you. I kind of thought it'd be one more year, just one, because you're looking at there's a lot of solidified coaches, especially the big names. And I know we talked about we're not sure who's going to open up yet and all that stuff. And
It's too bad Sean Poppy already went to
I
Clemson.
know that's what I was just fixing to say.
Champagne Poppy could have went up there to Knoxville.
There was one right down the road. Now he's up there with Dabo Sweeney doing all this fun stuff. But yeah, it is hard in that spot because that's a great comparison on the fact that if he would have been the men's side, you're like, doing pretty dang good.
Oh yeah,
Doing pretty dang good there. I just hope that they have to find somebody because you remember how it was, Shump. Like growing up, like that's what you watched. Like that was definitely Lady Vols was more watched than men's basketball because there were some tough years, brother, in the Thompson Bolden Arena for men's basketball. There were some tough years, but I just hope that they kind of find somebody. And do you think that kind of sets a precedent for maybe some other programs now with Danny being so, hey, I'm good at this. We'll be able to find coach. He has been great at finding talent as well and keeping talent. Do you think that kind of sets a tone for everybody else around the school?
Yeah, I think it certainly does. And it's backing up what he says. And a lot of, everybody talks like that you're going to be elite at everything and standards high, but it's a lot different making moves that prove it. And he's done it in some minor sports. And, I think probably the worst part of his tenure was letting Brian Pinsky go, the soccer coach, go to Florida State. So like that would be the one knock. Yeah. Pinsky was great. And I think the soccer program's taken a real step back since he left. But yeah, I mean, Danny White's done an undoubted fantastic job. And, I think the thing that's always so interesting on the Lady Vols program and them hiring coaches is, are you going to go outside the Pat Summit tree? Like, are you going to go outside the Lady Vols family? And obviously, Philip Fulmer was not going to do that. I think Philip Fulmer was very, very hands-off. And when they made the hire of Kelly Harper, I'd be shocked. Maybe not shocked I'd be surprised if they don't go outside the family. And I know he's very, very open to it. You don't make this move now to move away from Kelly Harper if you're just going to keep it into family, because there's no obvious great candidate. I mean, Kara Lawson's done solid at Duke, but nothing overwhelming. I think you're going to see Danny White look outside that Lady Vols heritage, that tradition, and as the statement said today, a nationwide search to find the best man or woman to lead the program.
Love it. All right. So I want to just quickly move over to baseball. I know you've been in basketball mode, but baseball's been playing pretty damn well. They just took a series from Georgia at home, and they're 24-5, 5-4 in the conference. So not quite the start that they wanted to have in conference. But talk to me a little bit about this program. I hadn't really looked into them all that much. I was just kind of trying to do it while you were giving that last answer. Talk to me a little bit about this team. It doesn't seem like Drew Beams had the start to this season as sort of the quote-unquote ace as he would like to. So what's gone into this season so far? Give me a quick overview of where the baseball team is right now.
Yeah, I'll start just briefly with the last weekend. Like, I think that Saturday game against Georgia could prove to be an inflection point in the season. I mean, Tennessee gets run ruled on Friday. They fall behind, I think it was 7-3, like the fourth or fifth inning. They come back and win that game. They take the series finale. Like, that was big. I mean, you're not in danger zone, but you were staring down the barrel of a pretty bad start to SEC play if you drop that series. So I think that was big. Team as a whole, last year, reverse. Offense is awesome. Offense is fantastic. Like, a lot of dudes in this lineup. Blake Burke's having the year that everybody expected him to have last year. He's having it this year. Christian Moore's doing his thing. Billy Amick, who transferred from Clemson, is one of the best hitters in the SEC. And you're seeing the dudes that were kind of on the outside looking in last year who had some opportunities but weren't everyday starters. Kavaris Tears is a cleanup hitter. He's taken that job and ran with it. Dylan Dryling's the everyday starter in left field. He's having an awesome season. So a great lineup. A lot of questions about the pitching staff. I mean, you knew there were going to be some. They've been magnified, really, I'd say, by two things: by Beam not having a great start to the season, and AJ Russell, who was a rising sophomore and was awesome when he got opportunities last year in a very crowded and talented Tennessee pitching staff. He's been great in the limited time he's been available this year. I mean, he was their Friday night starter to open the season, and he struck out like 10 dudes in 4 2/3 innings against Texas Tech. but it's been injuries. It was first side soreness, had him out for a couple weeks, and now it's forearm soreness. So those two things and what was already a thin Tennessee pitching staff, the two dudes that were the lead guys, one's injured, one's not having a great start. It's made it hard. So there's a lot of questions about the depth. There's some questions about, who the starting pitchers are going to be. AJ Causey stepped up, a Jacksonville State transfer. He's taking that Friday job, ever since Russell got injured. He got shelled against Georgia on Friday, but besides that, he's been really, really good. So you have a couple guys you feel good about. Nate Snead, another transfer from Wichita State's been the go-to guy in the bullpen. But after that, it's a lot of shakiness. So Frank Anderson's going to have to earn his money this year. He's an easy guy to have some trust in. I think they do have some talented young arms, one JUCO, two true freshmen, who were learning on the fly and struggling to find a strike zone sometimes, which I know drives Frank crazy. But there is some talent there. And I think if there's anything when you want to talk about ceiling for this Tennessee team, what they can do in the long term, watch the development of the pitching staff in the whole, and particularly some of those young arms.
Yeah, because you got bats. You definitely have bats.
Yep.
Speaking of, what's the new home run tradition now?
It's still the fur coat. It's all tamed down now because the NCAA is, you got to do everything in the dugout, and they've big emphasis on not celebrating. Essentially, that's been a big emphasis.
So zero fun from the NCAA. Who would have thought? No way.
Yeah, who would have thought?
Really?
I mean, Blake Burke's been ejected from a game this year from talking to the home plate or talking to the catcher after hitting a home run. And that's really the only one that's happened for Tennessee. But, across the country, there's been a number of them. I know Florida's had a couple. They're cracking down on it. So not quite as much, at least outward swagger from Tennessee's lineup as maybe to some other Tony Vitello teams.
All right, my last thing I think I have on baseball, and actually, talking about celebrations on the field, it's nice that they at least won't do that in softball. They still allow us to have we have this like Mox home run chain, and they all kind of stand there, and all the girl who hit the home run runs through there, and then the last girl who hit a home run puts the chain on her on the field. So it's pretty cool that they at least allow us to still do that. But I wanted to ask you about the catching situation. I've been kind of looking over some of the box scores and whatnot, and I know they brought in, I believe Bargo was a catcher, correct, in his last stop?
More of a DH.
More of a DH. So I know he's been playing like some third base and whatnot. They still have Cal Stark who's catching, and then Peebles as well. Talk to me a little bit about how Tony's kind of juggled the lineups, and it seems like they have a lot of depth and they have a lot of guys who can play.
They do have a lot of depth. Yeah, Bargo. He's been getting a lot of starts at DH. He had a hamstring issue back Alabama series, and he kind of had some pinch hits. I think this was the first week, like you said, he started a game at third base. Amick had his appendicitis, so he was out this weekend. So he's a versatile guy. He's played a little bit of corner outfield spots, mostly DHing, not much, kind of the emergency catcher more than anything. Cannon Peebles, who came in from North Carolina State, I mean, that was a guy with a lot of expectations and was awesome for the Wolfpack as a freshman last year. I think hit over 350, like 9 home runs, 50 plus RBIs. And, really at the plate, he hasn't had that type of season that he hoped and I think people expected. So him and Cal Stark, who obviously Cal was the starter last year, not a great bat, but in complete command of the pitching staff. I think the guy they trust the most from that standpoint behind the plate. Those two have been splitting those weekend starts and really just splitting everything. 4 games a week, I'd say typically you're seeing one of them start 2 games. And the others start 2 games.
Anybody else got anything for Shumpy?
I think I'm good, buddy. Hey, we appreciate you, McDog. We appreciate you a lot. First virtual guest.
Guys. I enjoyed this. This was a lot of fun. We'll have to do it again sometime later on in baseball season.
100%.
Oh,
We're going to try to get out to a game. We'll see what we can do there. I got to talk to my man Sean Burrows and see if he can hook us up, get us to a game. He was fantastic. But Shump, it's been amazing. I love getting a chance to chop it up with you again, and now with my boys here. And again, if you want to follow him all over social media, it's at rshump00, and check out all of his great content over there at RockyTopInsider.com. I promise you won't be disappointed. This is one of the hardest working men in Vol sports, or just in sports in general. He's like cranking out articles all of the time. And when him and I met up at that incredible burger spot, it's and what's the name of it again?
Stock and Barrel. I can remember
Stock
that
and
one.
Barrel.
Yes, incredible burger spot up there in Knoxville. He was taking me through like how he goes through about cranking out articles. It's an amazing thing that he does. You're still doing the RTI podcast?
Still doing the RTI podcast, overall sports, and then Jack Foster and I have a specific baseball one too. So make sure to check that one out. throughout
Love
baseball season.
Love it. Can't wait to check that out, Rye. It's been
Dog.
an absolute pleasure, brother. Thank you for coming back, and it's great to see your face.
3 claps
Yeah,
one time.
guys.
No.
All right, buddy. Have a great rest of your evening, and good luck covering the baseball. We'll talk to you soon.
Sounds great. See you guys.